What's up, y'all? This is Tasha. I am back with another review. Thank you so much for stopping into my channel. If you have been here before, welcome back. Please hit the subscribe button if you have not already subscribed. If you are new here, welcome. Also, you too, hit that subscribe button below. If you keep coming back to listen to these reviews, watch my other videos, whatever it is, just go ahead and subscribe. It's free for you to do so, okay? So today we are back with another review of Put a Ring on It Season 3. It is episode 5. And before I even get into this review, maybe it's just me. Let me know if you guys feel the other way. I feel like the producing and almost the editing of this show is horrible. Like, the way they have these conversations while they're on these dates, especially with what we've seen so far with these double dates and them just cutting and slicing what's going on, it makes it really hard to keep up with what is happening in the conversation. And after a while, you just sit there and you're like, what did I just write down for my notes? And why does really none of this make sense? Because they're cutting and slicing the conversations to where you're not even getting like a whole conversation and all the context of it before it shifts to another person or another view. And then it's just really annoying with this show. Like, y'all need to do better with this. Of course, while Married at First Sight is a 2-hour show that we really don't need to be 2 hours with 50 million 11 episodes, they at least do a decent job with capturing what they need to capture in a scene and with the editing before they move on to the next scene. This show, it just seems like they just chopping and screwing the editing just all over the place to where as a viewer, it makes it hard to keep track and keep up with the storyline that they're trying to give. Maybe it's just me, but if it's not, drop it in the comments below and let me know if sometimes you struggle just as much as I do. I watch a whole scene and then I'm looking like, what? Oh my God. So we're going to jump into this week's episode. So it picks up where the other one left off with Shea telling Fonzo, you better mute your person. Girl, cut it out. Fonzo says that Shea overreacted, and she did, but we know he knows what type of woman he has. So it's like, did you expect anything different, Fonzo? I know you didn't, so cut it out. So she approaches the girl, and Fonzo's date, of course, stands up with the plate. Shea's date has to come in between the two of them to push them away as Fonzo kind of steps aside. And then eventually he pulls Shea away in his silk red shirt and they are able to go outside. And she's like, she got me effed up. She know I can fight, blah, blah. Girl, this girl don't know you. And I'm going to need you to pipe it down. Calm down just a little bit because it ain't that serious, girlfriend. So anyway, they get in the car together and they end up driving off. And she says she doesn't think she overreacted. And Fonzo was like, I'm going to need you to calm down a little bit. And I'm like, Shea, I'm going to need you to have a reality check because you indeed overreacted. That lady did not say anything to you and you just got the party started as soon as they walked into the door, okay? So basically, Fonzo's date and Shea's date introduced themselves to each other. They kind of talk about what happened. And they basically finish off the date. So I'm just like, at least all wasn't lost. But this right here was ghetto, okay? So next we see Shorty and Kenneth getting ready for their dates. Her date is Tavi. He shows up and he is really cute. I was like, okay, Shorty, you better see where things maybe can go with Tavi, okay? He brings her flowers. Kenneth answers the door, frisks him down. And this time it looks like the flowers are safe from being, thrown in the trash or out the window, whatever, Kenneth chooses to do. So Kenneth and Tavi start talking about where he's from and football. And Kenneth is always trying to play it cool with these dates. Like, let me build a connection. Let me show Shorty that, everything is cool and all good. And maybe she'll just be like, well, this isn't any fun because, Kenneth is being cordial with the person. Kenneth, get out of here. Anyways, they end up going to like a little bar, tapas spot. It was a really cute spot, actually. He tells Shorty that he moved to Atlanta to open a gym with his friend because that's what he does. He seems to, go to different states and cities for a little bit, open up a gym, and then I guess maybe he still owns it or he sells it to somebody else. I'm not sure what happens, but he seems to have, a good head on his shoulders and know what he's doing with his career. Shorty basically says that Kenneth lied about what he does and she didn't find out the truth about him until she was already in love. So it was too late. And I was like, so you trying to tell me you can't fall out of love, girl? You can. You just don't want to. So Kenneth's date shows up and she is completely beautiful. She says dating is new for her as she just got out of a relationship. And Kenneth like, well, I'm kind of still in a relationship. So we'll see how this goes. Kenneth walks in with his date and they basically sit on these couches. And Shorty and her date is sitting here. And Kenneth and his date kind of sits right in front of them. Shorty now says basically she can't focus because she has one ear listening to her date and the other ear is trying to listen to Kenneth and his date. Kenneth tells his date that, he is cool. He's playing it cool with Shorty being over there, but clearly you can see all over his face he is not. And I really wish for this show they would tell these single people what they are walking into, because each of them, of course, seem shocked as they're the person that they're on a date with, significant other, then comes in and they're having to kind of share this date. So just tell these people what they're walking into so one got to go through all this. Kenneth said that he wanted to go over to Shorty's date and knock over the entire plate of food, but he's going to keep playing it cool. I'm like, Kenneth, you're about to do nothing. His date tells him a little bit about her. He says that he doesn't go out much because he is a workaholic. And I said, what? A workaholic? We still don't have a clear understanding of what you do, Kenneth, to say you're a workaholic. But okay. So Shorty and Tabby continue to talk and eat, but Kenneth and his date really can't seem to stop looking at them, leaning into whatever's going on Shorty's date. I'm like, girl, you ain't really helping the situation either. I can't remember Kenneth's date's name, but it's like you just feeding into the BS of he ain't talking about nothing. He ain't all that. Everything is cool. Like, why are you in Shorty's business with her date? Focus on Kenneth since you think that he's just such a great catch and get out the business of Shorty and her date. But Shorty date really doesn't sweat it, just continues to keep talking. And she's like, I appreciate that he continues to try to make me feel comfortable. And that basically definitely gave him some brownie points. And she was like, I'm here for a man just being able to know where he stands and being able to take control of his date, okay? So Kenneth tells us that he has a 7-year-old daughter, and before Shorty, he was in a 6-year relationship with his daughter's mother. So he says that circumstances hasn't allowed him to commit to marriage. And I'm just like, well, what would that be exactly? Because it sounds like one of those things that men say when they really don't have a real answer to the question that they're being asked. If you were in a previous relationship for 6 years, you've now been with Shorty for 3 years. What are these circumstances? Maybe the fact that you don't have steady income coming in. You don't have a quote unquote real job that is stable and consistently bringing in income. So are the circumstances you and not the other people? Because that's what it sounds like to me. Anyway, these dates are just completely all over the place in my opinion. I just feel like they're each trying to compete with one another. It's like you talk, I'm going to talk a little bit louder. You laugh, I'm going to laugh a little bit louder. It's just like, y'all, cut it out. Let's grow up. Oh my gosh. So Kenneth says he may be in denial to his date, and he may be holding on to something that may not be bringing him 100% happiness when his date basically asks kind of why they're here, why they're on the show. She tells him that he is the full package, and I'm like, where is the package? Has the package yet not been delivered by USPS, UPS, FedEx, DHL? Who's delivering the package? Because I don't see a full package here in Kenneth. And this is like, isn't this the second date that has told him that? I'm like, what? What are these women seeing? And do you need to borrow my glasses? Because I ain't seeing what y'all seeing, but okay. And she tells him that they need another date since he seemed to be a little bit nervous and distracted. And in my opinion, it seemed like old girl was really pushing up on him. And again, I'm not sure exactly why, but she definitely was like letting him know, I'm here, I'm interested, let's do this again. And I just, again, maybe the editing cut out a whole bunch of stuff that maybe would make this make more sense. But right now, I don't understand why she is giving him so much energy, but okay. So next we see Dr. Nicole visiting Shea and Fonzo, what ends up being Shea. And I'm like, please, Dr. Nicole, check her behavior. She says that she had time to reflect on everything that has happened and really to get out of character on that double date really made her, think about things and what she needs to do to make sure that never happens again. She says what triggered her was him coming into the restaurant, basically sitting right next to them and not saying anything as if they were strangers. And I'm like, but Shea, you know y'all are not strangers. So that's not really an excuse. You just wanted to show your behind, and you didn't like that he was on a date with another woman. Like, call a spade a spade. So Dr. Nicole says she really has to give him room to pick up the pen and write down whatever he sees that he wants. And if what he picks up and writes down is not a life with them together, then she just has to move on. And Shea doesn't want to come to grips with that piece of it, that while I know I can walk away, maybe she has not thought about or feels or thinks about what that may feel for him to walk away from her. I don't know. Shea says that she has to basically watch Fonzo's story play out, and she realized she was really interfering with that and sabotaging herself in the meantime. Dr. Nicole tells her that she needs to let him make his decision and tells her that the process is clear. Either he puts a ring on it or he doesn't. And Shea was like, well, we've been there, Dr. Nicole, so I just don't know what we're doing here now. And she's like, well, where you guys were before and where you are now is completely different. So Dr. Nicole asks her to tell her the story about what happened with them previously. So Shea tells us that they were engaged and they were set to be married. And hours before they were supposed to get married, that's when the girl posted that Fonzo was the love of her life. So that story that she told us, I think a couple episodes ago at this point. So the girl said that it didn't stop anything. They went to the courthouse and they did everything. They just didn't know they needed a Vegas officiant to sign the paperwork. So I guess they were trying to get married in Vegas. So she said they did everything except for the paperwork of it all. So technically they are still engaged. And she says when they got back and they tried to have the engagement party and everything and things were just off, and then the issues with his family, that she was just like, oh, hey, this is it. I'm walking away. I'm done. So she said that she left him and they broke up for a couple months. And she said, I was really happy, but then I realized what was missing and it was him. But then when she came back, she was double guessing herself and trying to think if she came back too soon, because she came back into the same spinning wheel. And I'm just like, so you expected things to significantly change in 2 months, especially if y'all didn't necessarily address whatever you needed to address individually before you come back together. And then if you come back together, deciding how is this now different than when we were together before? Like, how did you expect things to be different if y'all didn't really address anything and all you did was have space from each other? I don't know. So Dr. Nicole tells her to really think about what she wants, and Shea is thinking about if she ever considered the things that make her happy and if she ever told Fonzo these things. She says she thinks she's trying to prepare herself before departure, and she says, you know, if that's what it is, she ain't going back and forth no more, and Fonzo just needs to make a decision. And I was like, but it sounds like you've made a decision for yourself. You're just afraid to commit to that decision. I'm like, if you said you were happy when y'all were separated and you're with him and you're not happy, the answer seems pretty cut and dry to me, but that's just me. So we then see Kenneth, Fonzo, and Otis all meet up at a pool hall to chop it up. Fonzo asks, you know, how they felt about their dates, and Kenneth said he had tunnel vision with his girl, and she was really laying it on. And I'm like, she was. Fonzo said his date was crazy without going into any extra details. Kenneth thinks he is going to get rejected if he asks Shorty to marry him, and Fonzo says that if he could give him any advice is to really get yourself together first, because basically if a woman is able to consistently have something that she has that's basically better than you, she's always going to kind of hold that over you, and you need to be confident in what you have and what you bring to the table. Now, I can partially agree, because it's all right for a woman to bring more to the table because, you know, women are doing a whole lot these days, FYI, Fonzo. But I also need the man to be just as stable and basically matching me when it comes into how much effort we're putting into this thing. That's not saying everything financially may be, you know, on the same terms. And if y'all are okay with that, with, you know, the woman being the breadwinner, cool. But if you're not, really coming to terms with that and figuring out, you know, is this going to work or is this not going to work? So Otis says he has no more arguments left in him. And if she's going to argue, she's going to argue by herself at this point. And Otis is like, not Otis. Fonzo is like, well, you know, we still have to listen. And I'm like, look at Fonzo really trying to be the voice of reason with these two guys when you ain't got your ish together either. Okay, sir, because I feel 100% confident that you've been out here cheating on Shea the whole 3 years that y'all been married. But that's just my opinion. Just my opinion. Otis asks Fonzo how he feels, and he says that if Shea basically says no, his head will probably explode. Otis says if Charlana says no, then he probably won't ever ask another woman to marry him again, and Fonzo agrees. And Kenneth says he'll just join a cult if Shorty doesn't accept the proposal. So now they are back in group session to discuss the dates. Kenneth and Shorty are up first, and Shorty tells Dr. Nicole, you know, it was hard to have conversations in the same room, and it almost seemed like a competition, which I 1000% agree with, because that's how I felt watching it. Kenneth said he really wasn't interested in his date, and it was kind of more like friends. And Shorty says that Kenneth knows what he likes, and he likes a lot of women that are out of his league. And I was just like, so like you basically, but you still here, so he got something going for him, I guess. She tells them that he didn't present himself in an honest manner, which she already said earlier, but we had already figured that out. She said that she thought the honesty, stability, and maturity and everything that she needed to see would come along with it. And I was just like, but why? If he didn't show you those things, why did you think over time it was just going to happen? And now that you're 3 years deep and you see it still ain't happening, like, what are you still expecting from this man at this point? I just don't understand. Otis says he thinks that Shorty is bashing Kenneth. Kenneth says she is basically saying all this as if he is incapable of doing better. And I don't think you're incapable of doing better, but what have you shown her better, Kenneth? Like, in the 3 years, what has the progression been? Or has it always been you dibbling, dabbling in a little bit of everything, and there's really no true stability, you know, or maturity on either end that is happening with you, you know, financially, emotionally, whatever it is? What have you shown her that has changed in the past 3 years? But Dr. Nicole says that they need to talk, but that it needs to happen in another space. So they agree and they move on to the next couple, which is Otis and Charlana. So Otis tells Dr. Nicole that they went to yoga, and Charlie is really pushing him to be like, tell Dr. Nicole how you was looking at all, you know, her tattoos and stuff. And I was just like, Charlie, the tattoos were on her back, and she had on a sports bra and leggings because y'all were in yoga. You acting like the tattoos were on her chest, her upper thigh, in between her leg. Like, Charlie, you being real dramatic right now, girl. Cut it out. She says that Otis was really feeling his date because, you know, he's putting on his chain. He's putting on cologne, which he never does. And it's like, we're going to do yoga. Why you doing all this? And, of course, Otis is denying. Like, I always put on cologne. I always do this. Okay. But she just is saying all this because she feel like he wasn't open, since he wasn't open with her about the first date that they had, that there is some attraction there. So, of course, Otis has to place the blame on her, and he says that her past behavior basically shows that she would get upset. Depending on what I tell her about this date, I know she's going to get upset, so it's just easier for me not to say anything. So they both say they want a safe place to communicate their dates when Dr. Nicole asks them, and Dr. Nicole says, well, y'all both have to provide that space for each other. So while we're in the group session, Otis then tells us all that he has talked to Milan through the DMs. That he found out that they had some friends in common, and they talked about those friends, and they kind of talked about the horseback riding date. And he didn't share that with Charlana because he didn't think it was important. And I'm like, but how, Sway? How did you not think that was important, but you just want to put it on blast right here, right now in front of everybody? So Charlie is pissed. She tells him that he looks like a liar. He said he didn't want to blindside her, but what do you think you just did right here? She calls him a monster. And I was like, Charlie girl, a whole monster? A monster. I don't like Otis either, but a whole monster? Girl, the dramatics of it all. But I just couldn't believe that Kenneth is like, you just said that Otis was saying that Shorty just bashed Kenneth, but yet here you come with like, y'all thought that was bashing? Hold my beer. Let me just blindside my girl completely in front of everybody else and embarrass her. Make it make sense. Charlana said that they had a conversation that they would not text anyone. And basically she considers the DMs texting, and Otis says that they didn't have any rules, that they couldn't DM anyone. Sure y'all didn't, Otis. Charlana says, well, then I'm going to DM her. And Dr. Nicole is like, well, what is that going to do? She was like, well, he can DM, so I'm going to DM her and ask her, you know, what's happening. And I'm just like, that is not necessary, ma'am. Check your man. Don't check the girl. And if you got to go through all that you want to check her, you might just want to leave him. Like, to me, all that is unnecessary, and it is not worth it, child, to be checking people. Like, who has the time and the energy to want to check him when your man was the one that slid in her DMs? Oh, Dr. Nicole asks what is going on in this moment, and Charlie says that they are done. And Otis is like, I don't know what is happening. She tells him that when it's time, Dr. Nicole tells him that when it's time for his actions to take on ownership, he goes blank. And I was like, bloop, in the words of Nene Leakes, because he does exactly that. When he's being called to the carpet, it's always like, but what? That don't mean nothing. That ain't no big deal. That ain't how it went down. It's all in her head. Like, you just lose all sense of accountability at that point. But basically, Charlana cannot stop talking for Dr. Nicole to get her point across, because she is hot as fish grease in here, okay? She said it's hard to talk about her date now because she's heard all of this from Otis, and Dr. Nicole is like, well, I would hate for you to kind of get cheated out the process. But she says, you know, very nonchalantly, you know, my date was okay. I didn't pay attention to Otis and his date. And like I said, you know, conversation was nice as it was on the first date. So then it's supposed to be Fonzo and Shea's turn, but Charlana can't stop talking to Otis. So she says, as we're trying to focus on Fonzo and Shea, she's over here leaning into him and trying to whisper, and says that he has her effed up. Like, I ain't playing with you no more. So Dr. Nicole is like, well, do you want to share? And she says what he did was a deal breaker, and she is ready to go because they are done. She's like, give me the keys. Where are the keys? I am done and I want to leave. And I'm like, yes, he did mess up, girl. Like, sliding in DMs ain't cool, because who knows what else y'all been talking about at this point that you have obviously not shared. But you got so upset with this, but when he called you dirty after that date, you just cried and sat there and put up with it. Keep that same energy. I think she is just using this as an excuse to leave. Like, she wants to leave him, but she couldn't figure out, I guess, a good enough reason, which I think just him being an asshole is a good enough reason from what we've seen in these 5 episodes. But she just, I guess this is her now legit reason for breaking things off with him. So I think she blew it out of proportion from what we are told happened in the DMs. But if this results in her actually leaving him, I don't got no problem with it. Oh yeah, but that's where the episode ends. Looks like next week they are actually meeting, I think, with some of their family or friends to kind of get their take on things. And then it looks like Shorty and Kenneth is going to get into it again when she says, you know, when I said that you go for women out of your league, I meant that. So we'll see what happens between them. But as usual, that we've thought on the very first episode, none of these people should be getting engaged, and that stance continues, okay? Let's chat it up in the comments, and until next week, peace.